Good morning. I'm Bill Schwab. I'm your instructor for the senior seminar course, and I'm in Manchester, England right now. At least I hope I am. And I thought we would try to use some video technology to talk about the syllabus and also talk about the requirements for the course. The senior seminar is the capstone for the department for both criminal justice and sociology majors. And its major purpose is for you to write a senior thesis and to present it to the class. And we'll talk more about that throughout the semester. There are three parts to the course. The first couple of weeks we look at your efforts to get a good job and to get into a great graduate program. And so the first 2 or 3 weeks we're going to have you bring your resume up to date, learn how to write an appropriate cover letter, write a personal statement, and then finally get a page up on LinkedIn. And during those 2 or 3 weeks, first 2 or 3 weeks of the semester, we're going to have representatives from Career Services talk to you. This coming Thursday, there will be a person talking about building an appropriate resume. I'll show you a clip next week after I return, which shows that the typical HR person spends about 6 seconds looking at your resume. And so things have to pop. What we'll also learn is that every time you apply for a job, there will need to be a unique resume. There will be need for a unique cover letter because much of the early screening is done electronically using a computer algorithm, and keywords aren't in those documents. You're not even going to get looked at. So that's part one. Part two is a seminar. And what we do in part two is discuss 3 timely topics. And we're going to be using 3 books. One is called Unfair by Adam Benefanto. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Whether you are a criminal justice or whether you are a sociology major, I think you're going to find this book disturbing, because what he shows by using social science research as well as neuroscience research is that our entire criminal justice system is unfair. Whether it is a police lineup, whether it is a witness describing an event, whether it is the jury, the prosecutor, the defense lawyer, all of these parts of a criminal justice system lead to situations where your color and your class and your gender oftentimes determine your outcome in our criminal justice system. What I think the major contribution of this book is that it shows how social science research and neuroscience can allow us to bring up and create a fair criminal justice system. So I think I read this over Christmas. I think you're going to find the book fascinating, and especially those of you in the criminal justice major. The second book is by Paul Taylor called Next America, and the subtitle is looking at the coming conflict between boomers and millennials. I happen to be one of those people that really like millennials, and I'm around people all the time, boomers, who really have utter contempt for your generation. So I thought this would be a good book to look at what's happening in our society today. The fact that we have the largest generation, the boomers, in terms of percentage of our population, who are now entering retirement at about 10,000 people per day, versus the millennials, which are the largest generation in terms of numbers. There's about 100 million of you and about 76 million of me. Each generation has profoundly different agendas, and we're going to be taking a look at those agendas and the consequences of my generations and the things that we have done as a generation to make your life more difficult. As I told people, boomers could screw up a brick. I'm not really high on my generation. The third book I've used in previous semesters, and it's by Paul Rank, and it's called Chasing the American Dream. And I think we see the issues that are being discussed in this book worked out in our political process in the 2016 presidential election race. Donald Trump has a growing following of very, very upset people, as does Bernie Sanders. And I think what they're reflecting is an underlying change in our society, whether it be immigration or whether it be growing inequality, that has led many, many Americans to believe that the American dream is no longer possible and that the society is no longer fair. And so we'll spend probably the most time on this book because I think it's the backdrop for our current election. And I think it well describes the issues that we are going to have to cope with as a society in the next 20 years or so, in the next generation. So those are the readings, and I think you'll enjoy them all. I think they're thought-provoking, and I think they touch on some underlying dynamics going on in American society at the moment. What about the course requirements? First of all, there is grading. We'll have to come up with a grade for you in the class, and so if you would, take a look on the third page of the resume and look at how the different assignments are being weighted. Class attendance is mandatory. If you miss 3 or more classes, you lose a letter grade. We cannot have a seminar unless we have full participation by all students. The next point is that through the last 3 years since I started beginning this course, I have operated on the assumption that students will come to class prepared and ready to discuss the material for the day. And as I mentioned, or I write in the syllabus, I have been so naive. What I've discovered last semester in particular is that the majority of majority of students in the class did not come prepared. And I discovered last week that 2 or 3 students had not even purchased the book, and they got a grade commensurate with their effort. But what I'm going to ask you to do this semester is that for every chapter of the book, you write a reflection on what you've read, what you liked, what you disliked, what upset you, what you didn't know, and then 2 or 3 discussion questions. Prior to the first class on a book, you will need these uploaded to Blackboard using SafeAssign, and we'll discuss that in greater length. So, for example, in the first book, the Bellatino book, we're talking about maybe a 10 or 11 page effort, and less or more depending upon the length of the book. So I'll give you some examples of how this will work. And what I will do is, before we start a discussion of a chapter, I'll read through all of your reflections, I'll consolidate them, and send them out for an outline of what we're going to be discussing in class that particular day. So we'll talk about reflections and questions on the readings a little bit later. I, in the past, have had people or students do a policy paper for the midterm. That hasn't worked very well either. And so this semester there will be a midterm over the 3 books, and I'll give you an idea of how we're going to, or how I'm going to structure that midterm exam. Finally, on the issue of technology, we have had a lot of trouble using PowerPoint on Microsoft, using the technology that we find in our classrooms. It just isn't working. So I started poking around finding an alternative over Christmas, and I think Google is the way we're going to need to go. If you'll take a look at, you all have Gmail accounts, so you can all log into Google. We'll go over this in class, but take a look at Google Sheets, and I think it's a very flexible, very robust, very secure way of putting together your presentations throughout the semester. So I will see you next week. I'm sorry I couldn't meet with you today. I'm attending a conference on the integration of immigrants into European society, and this is my area of research, and this is where I think I can make a contribution to my discipline. So Nathan, thank you for spending some time with the students and doing the the attendance. By the way, one last point, we will have an office visit, each of you will have an office visit with me during the semester, and Nathan has my calendar, and I hope you'll take a few minutes and get on my calendar so we can discuss not only your careers, your aspirations for graduate school, but also discuss the topic of your senior thesis. Bye.